The rooftop speaker cracked, and Sloane laughed like nothing had broken. Laughter skittered across wet concrete, fast and cruel. My phone buzzed with a file named "For You," and Evan said, "Don't." I pressed play anyway. A voice whispered my name, then peeled secrets like old paint. "Lena," Sloane said, "she believes everything." The crowd cheered for a toast, and the words slid under the noise like a blade. I tasted copper and rain. "Tell me this is a prank," I said, steady as I could. Sloane smiled wide and soft, like mercy, and it hurt worse. "You're overthinking," she said. "Enjoy the night." Evan reached for my wrist, but I pulled free. The file kept unspooling, exposing threads I thought were ours. Noah watched from the rail, jaw set, eyes asking me to stop. I didn't. The laugh on the recording matched the one in front of me. The world stuttered, and the night answered, "How could this happen between two best friends?" The restroom mirror held a stranger, eyes rimmed with rain and blame. Paper towels rasped like sand, and my breath counted lies. "Sloane wouldn't," I whispered, but the recording hummed under my skin. The hall door creaked and Sloane said, "There you are." I steadied my face and turned. Her perfume floated like a memory I wanted back. "You set me up," I said, voice calm but not kind. She tilted her head. So soft, so careful. "You always think the worst," she said, and it almost worked. My throat closed, then opened like a wound. "What did I do that made it easy?" I asked. "To use me as the joke." Water hissed at the sink, a thin applause for the lie. She stepped closer and smiled small. "You're tired," she said. "Come breathe." The mirror fogged. I wiped a circle and found courage I hadn't met yet. We walked back to the roof like actors hitting marks, and the air felt thinner. Evan said, "We can go," but I shook my head and stayed. Laughter receded into pockets like tide, leaving sharp shells behind. Noah hovered near the exit, unsure if truth belonged to him. "If there's more, show me now," I said, holding out the phone. Sloane's smile didn't flinch. "You don't trust me," she said, and the words sounded rehearsed. Evan's eyes caught mine, stormy and pleading. "Please," he said, "not here." The speaker popped, a small thunder, and the file looped back. I heard my name again, dragged across velvet. "Why did you send it?" I asked, "if not to watch me bleed?" Sloane's lashes lowered. "Because you needed to hear it," she said, and the sky finally opened. Wind knifed through the music, and I found a flicker of mercy in old promises. "We don't break," I reminded, tasting summers and sleepovers and vows. Sloane said, "We grew up like that was absolution." I swallowed the easy choice to run. "Then grow with me," I said, reaching for the thread we once braided. The crowd thinned to silhouettes, and the city pulsed like a bruise. Evan said, "Let's reset," and hope wobbled on its first steps. Sloane's gaze softened, and for a heartbeat she looked like the girl who held my secrets. "One truth," I said, "and I'll hold." She breathed in, and the night held with her. "He wasn't yours," she said, gentle as a push over an edge. The roof tilted, and the past cracked like ice. Memory flickered, and I saw the first hairline crack I ignored. A coffee shop morning, sunlight warm as trust, and Sloane waving both hands. "He's not coming," she said, breezy and bright. I laughed because I always laughed with her. My phone lit with a missed call from Evan, time-stamped before her message. "He'll make it up to you," she said, and I believed. The barista called my name like a blessing. We split a croissant, the way we used to split worries. Sloane said, "You're too forgiving," and kissed my cheek. I walked away humming, lighter than facts. The scene rewound now, playing in brutal clarity. I felt the heat go cold, like sunlight turning to a screen. I finally read the line beneath the line, and it said, "She chose for me." The old swing set groaned under our weight, chains squealing like tired secrets. The park smelled of cut grass and sunburnt wood. Sloane pushed me higher and shouted, "Well, never fall." I laughed, and the sound felt clean. I remembered scraped knees patched with borrowed band-aids, and the way she braided my hair under streetlights. "Forever," she said once, and I believed. Evan used to wave from the fence, a third shadow folded into ours, steady and sure. "Don't let go," I begged one night, my fingers white around the chain. Sloane grinned, fearless, and said, "I'll catch you." The memory burned warm now, sharper than the night's betrayal. Back then, the air carried trust, pure as breath. It was the kind of childhood oath that etched itself into marrow. We thought laughter could bind us stronger than blood. I swallowed hard, wondering how forever could splinter into now. We hid in my attic with flashlights and candy, the beams slicing dust like stars. "If monsters come, we fight them," Sloane whispered, fierce at 10-night Janway. I nodded, heart pounding with sugar and loyalty. The floor creaked and we froze, then burst into muffled laughter. Evan knocked on the ladder and asked to join, but we hushed him. Secrets lived better in pairs. "We'll always be safe here," she said. And it felt true. We built forts from blankets and filled them with pinky promises. The world below us spun with parents and rules, but up here it was ours. I told her my biggest fear, and she swore to guard it like treasure. The light faded, batteries dying, but I wasn't afraid. Trust glowed brighter than bulbs. Now I replayed her words and felt their edges cut. Safety was a lie she handed me long before tonight. Summer nights tasted of cherry popsicles and wet grass. We sprawled under sprinklers, clothes soaked, faces tipped toward stars. Sloane said, "One day we'll leave this place, but together." The water hissed like applause. Evan joined with his crooked grin, sliding across slick lawn, our trio stitched in laughter. Fireflies blinked above, tiny lanterns of faith. "Promise we won't change," I begged, water dripping from my lashes. Sloane touched my hand, steady as sky. "I swear," she whispered, and the word rang sacred. The night pressed soft against our skin, holding us in a bubble of forever. Now the memory glowed bright, then burned cruel, reminding me that even the purest vows rot in silence. I tasted melted sugar and betrayal, both sticky and hard to wash away. We carved our names in the oak tree by the lake, pressing blades into bark like vows into time. "This will last longer than us," Sloane said, her grin wide. The water mirrored our faces, younger, fearless. Noah spotted us once and said, "You two act like sisters." We giggled, proud of the title. I traced the letters with my thumb, whispering, "Forever carved." Sloane pulled me close and said, "No one can erase us." The lake shimmered with gold, and for a heartbeat the world felt immortal. Years later, the scar in the woods still stood, even as our bond bled. I remembered that moment like an anchor dragging me under. Carvings endure, but promises fade. The tree stood honest while we broke around it. I wanted to hate it, but it only reflected what we lost. Late nights meant rooftop stargazing, wrapped in old quilts, voices low like prayers. Sloane whispered, "If the stars fall, I'll catch them." I laughed, calling her impossible. Evan lay beside us, sketching constellations in his notebook. "You two are dreamers," he teased, but his voice held fondness. The city hummed below, small against our wide-eyed plans. I told them I feared being left behind. Sloane turned, eyes fierce, and said, "Never without you." Her hand brushed mine, firm as truth. The night air cooled, wrapping us in its vow. We fell asleep counting meteors, anchored in promises we thought unbreakable. That memory burned like a lantern tonight, showing me how far we had fallen. Dreams shared once as stars now lay shattered at our feet. Morning arrived thin and gray, and the city sounded hungover. I stirred my coffee until the swirl went blank. Evan said, "Let me drive you," but I took the train alone. Silence sat beside me like a witness who refused to speak. My screen filled with messages that pretended nothing had cracked. Sloane wrote, "Crazy night, like chaos was a party favor." I typed deleted, then typed again, building a bridge I did not cross. Noah sent a single line that read, "I'm around." I heard the rooftop laugh echo in the carriage windows. "Ah, tell me the truth," I whispered to no one, and the rails answered with a cold rattle. The day stretched ahead, long as a dare I could not refuse. At lunch, the group chat lit like a flare, and Sloane tossed an apology shaped like a wink. "Jokes went too far," she wrote, then threaded a smile across it. Evan replied with a cautious thumbs up. I stared at the screen until the words dried out. "You framed it as fun," I typed, then paused. She answered fast, "We always tease." I tasted the edge under the sugar. "Teasing is gentle," I wrote. "That was a knife." 3 dots pulsed, then vanished, leaving a bruise of silence. Noah texted me privately, "Do you want receipts?" I closed my eyes and felt the chat keep breathing without me. I set the phone face down and listened to my ribs creak. That evening we met at a gallery, opening that smelled like paint and performative kindness. Sloane drifted through crowds as if crowned. She glanced at me, then at Evan, then back, quick and cutting. "Stay," Evan murmured, and I nodded, nails crescenting my palm. Sloane said, "You look radiant," and her grin dressed the word in thorns. I thanked her and stepped aside, but her gaze hooked on my shadow. A photographer snapped, and the flash revealed something sour in her eyes. Noah approached with paper cups and said, "Hydrate." I swallowed courage that tasted like tap water. The room hummed, and I heard envy hiding in the baseline. I found a hallway lined with crates and exit signs that buzzed like insects. Sloane's voice slipped around a corner, low and silver. "She'll forgive me," she said, as if fate took requests. Another voice muttered, and the syllables tasted like strategy. I stepped closer, counting my heartbeat to stay steady. "It wasn't an accident," I said to the air, and my echo confessed it back. Sloane emerged smooth as glass. "You were eavesdropping," she said, and the word felt childish beside the wound. "I'm listening," I answered, and my voice held. She smiled like mercy again, but the mask had seams. Noah's footsteps approached, and the hallway tightened. We stepped outside into rain that had finally committed. The awning thrummed, stitching the night together. "Tell me why," I said, and the question shook. Sloane watched the street like it held an answer. "You took up all the space," she said, soft as a match before flame. Evan joined us and said, "This is not the place." I lifted my hands empty of peace. "Then name the place," I said, "and I'll meet you with truth." Cars hissed past, leaving trails of quick regret. Sloane steadied, then looked at Evan with a history I suddenly understood. Noah stood between us like a hinge that would not break. Distance drew a hard line, and we stayed on our sides. The file replayed in Evan's apartment, every syllable twisting. Sloane's voice wove knives into silk, whispering truths shaped like daggers. Evan said, "It's real," and his shoulders sagged like broken beams. I pressed pause, air choking me. "She planned it," I said, the words crumbling. Noah leaned on the counter, eyes sharp. "I told you," he muttered, regret coating his tone. The silence afterward was heavier than the recording. Evan's hand shook as he poured water, spilling more than he drank. "She wanted me," he said finally, and the room split open. My skin burned cold. Every memory of laughter twisted into betrayal, every promise into ash. "She didn't just take you," I whispered. "She took us." The ceiling fan whirred, mocking with its steady rhythm. Truth had a sound, and it was unbearable. I stormed into the rooftop where it began, rain scrubbing the night raw. Sloane waited, umbrella tilted like armor. "You finally came," she said, tone rich with triumph. "Why?" I asked, the word ripped by wind. Her lips curved, and she stepped closer. "Because you never knew how to share," she said, venom wrapped in velvet. I shook, not from rain but from truth crawling into skin. "You stole because you envied," I said, and my voice cracked. She smirked, eyes gleaming. I took because I could. Lightning lit her face like revelation, showing the fracture of loyalty. My fists clenched, nails drawing crescents. This wasn't friendship, I said. It was possession. She lifted her umbrella higher, shielding her smile. The storm applauded her cruelty. The cafe we once called sanctuary now reeked of ghosts. I sat alone at our table, tracing the scar in the wood where we carved initials. Sloane entered, flawless in spite of rain. "Why drag me here?" she asked, contempt faint. "Because this is where forever began," I said, voice steady but aching. She rolled her eyes, sipping coffee she didn't taste. "Forever is for children," she whispered. I clenched my jaw, memory of summers tightening my chest. "You swore," I said, words trembling but clear. She leaned in, green eyes sharp. "Promises are currency," she said, and I spent mine. The truth landed like shattered glass. Around us the hum of cups and chatter drowned, leaving only betrayal screaming between heartbeats. At the gallery's backstairs Noah cornered me. His voice was low but fierce. "You deserve truth," he said, holding out his phone. Screenshots glared white, messages from Sloane weaving betrayal like lace. Evan's name inked in every thread. My breath punched out of me. "She traded me for him," I whispered. Noah nodded, jaw tight. "She wanted everything you held." The stairwell smelled of damp stone and secrets. I pressed the wall to stay upright, the cold biting through my coat. The texts blurred, but the meaning carved deep. "How long?" I asked. "Too long," he answered. The staircase tilted beneath my feet. My world had edges now, sharp and cruel. Noah's eyes softened, but pity felt like salt. I closed the screen, but the truth kept glowing in my bones. The truth came full circle, in a single confrontation. Evan stood between us, rain dripping from his collar. "Tell her," I demanded, voice carved from stone. Sloane smiled, eyes never leaving mine. "I wanted him," she said, each word deliberate. Evan's face cracked, torn between guilt and shame. "It wasn't supposed to happen," he stammered. I shook, the earth slipping beneath. "You were my world," I whispered to both, and silence fell sharp as glass. Sloane stepped closer, lips parting. "Your world was easy to take," she said, cruel grace in every syllable. The night swallowed us, thunder echoing final judgment. My chest hollowed, but my eyes stayed unbroken. The wound was carved, but it would scar. I turned away, not weaker but severed. The storm inside me broke first. I slammed the door of the loft shut, words sparking before thought. "You tore us apart," I shouted, voice shredding. Sloane leaned against the table, smirk sharp as glass. "You handed me the pieces," she said, steady and cruel. Evan stood frozen, palms open as if to shield a fire. "Please stop," he begged, but neither of us moved. Noah's voice echoed from the hall, "Don't let her win," but rage drowned him out. I stepped closer, every heartbeat a drum of fury. "You betrayed me," I said, trembling, "and for what? Envy, love, power?" Sloane's eyes flashed and she whispered, "All of it." The words burned. My throat tore as I screamed, the sound shaking walls. No silence could save us now. The fight spilled into words too jagged to contain. Sloane hissed, "You were always the favorite." I fired back, "You were always the liar." Evan's voice cracked, "Stop making me the prize." But the storm ignored him. My hands shook, fury carving through restraint. "You envied what we built," I said, chest heaving, "so you burned it down." Sloane's laugh cut sharp, slicing air. "I made it mine," she said, daring me to deny. Evan dropped his head, shame shadowing him. Noah whispered from the side, "Truth always poisons," but his words floated useless. The space thickened with every accusation. My pulse thundered, and my heart felt ripped raw. Tonight was no longer about forgiveness, it was survival of dignity. The words bled into silence, heavy as chains. I stood across from her, chest burning. You were my sister, I whispered, voice breaking. Sloane's expression flickered, but she masked it quick. You were my competition, she said, venom steady. Evan lifted his head, eyes wet. We loved you both, he said, voice cracked. I snapped toward him. No, you loved her at my expense. The truth gutted him, and silence followed. Noah stepped closer, hand on my shoulder. You don't need her lies, he said gently. Tears blurred my vision, but anger kept me standing. The air felt electric, alive with words unsaid. Every bond we built lay shattered on the floor. The silence roared louder than screams, and it cut deepest. When shouting returned, it was fire-consuming wood. You never cared for me, I said, voice wild. Sloane stepped forward, eyes aflame. I cared enough to want your life, she spat. Evan raised his voice. Enough, but we drowned him out. I gave you everything, I cried. My trust, my soul, my years. She sneered, and I gave them back sharpened. The tension snapped and I shoved the table, glasses toppling. Evan grabbed my arm. Don't lose yourself to her, he begged. Noah's phone buzzed. Forgotten. The storm outside clawed at windows, thunder echoing our rage. The climax roared with every breath, every word tearing deeper. There was no return, only wreckage. The storm inside and out hit its peak. We faced each other, nothing left to hide. You destroyed us, I said, voice flat, but final. Sloane smiled faint, a scar of pride. I freed us, she replied. Evan's voice trembled. No, she destroyed what mattered. Tears streaked his face, but guilt held him silent. Noah muttered, Truth stands, his voice the last anchor. I stepped back, lungs raw. Then take it, I said to her, empty palms raised. Take the ashes, you wanted the fire. Sloane tilted her chin, unshaken, but the storm cracked thunder behind her. The fight left my body, only hollow strength remained. Tonight carved the ending, brutal and undeniable. The friendship was dead, and we stood in its ashes. Dawn dragged a gray sheet over the city, and the loft smelled like wet metal. I gathered shards of glass with a dish towel, careful of the edges that knew my name. Noah brewed tea in the kitchenette and said, Breathe. The steam rose in small prayers, and I wanted to be forgiven by air. Evan texted I'm sorry 3 times, each one lighter than the last. I typed nothing, and let the notifications fade like weak stars. Sloane's words still floated in the room, thin and barbed, unwilling to leave. She took because she could, I repeated, and the truth sat down beside me. Noah said, You don't owe her your pain, and the floor steadied a fraction. I opened the window, letting the storm's aftertaste scatter out. My reflection in the glass looked like someone who had survived fire. Today is for keeping what is mine, I said, and the line surprised me. The day blinked once, and I decided my name would not be her souvenir. I walked to the lakeside oak, the carved initials raw under my fingers. Wind combed the water, and the sky wore a dull silver sheen. We wrote forever here, I said, and the words sounded tired but alive. Footsteps paused behind me and Noah said, You can write again. I closed my eyes and let old summers pass through like birds in migration. Grief settled, but it did not chain me. I whispered, I choose the part of me that stays kind. The bark scratched my palm, and the sting felt honest in a way her lies never could. I laid a small ribbon at the roots, a farewell that did not beg. Goodbye, I said, and the echo came back gentle. Noah did not fill the silence, and I was grateful. The lake kept our secret and released me to shore, lighter than I arrived. Work returned like a stern teacher, and I showed up on time. The office light was bland, and I welcomed its plain truth. Evan waited outside the elevator and said, Can we talk? I met his eyes and saw a boy who lost the map. I can hear you, I said, but I won't hold you up. He nodded, and it looked like rain in human form. I hurt you, he said, and I let her take us off course. My stomach clenched, but my feet stayed even. Take your shame and go fix yourself, I said steady. We are not a lesson you get to repeat, I added, softer. He whispered, I will do better, and the words knew they were late. I walked past, and the hallway did not tilt beneath me. Sloane arrived at the gallery lobby with a bouquet like a trophy. She set it down between us and smiled as if mirrors still adored her. Truce, she said, and the word clinked like cheap metal. I studied the flowers and found no scent worth keeping. You mistake quiet for surrender, I said, voice even but firm. Her eyes flared, then cooled, and she tilted her chin in defiance. You were never built to win, she said, silk over wire. My heart beat once like a hammer on steel. I was built to heal, I answered, and the floor felt level beneath me. She laughed softly, an imitation of joy. Keep the bouquet, I said. It suits your stage. I left it wilting under bright lights that exposed everything false. Evening crawled back, and the rooftop waited like a witness called again. I stood where the laugh had cut me, and reclaimed the air with a steady breath. Noah joined me, hands in pockets, gaze steady as dusk settled. You will be fine, he said, and the wind agreed in whispers. I said, fine is not enough, but it is a start. City lights woke one by one, patient as healing. My phone buzzed with a final message from Sloane that I did not open. I deleted it and felt nothing fall apart inside me. She does not hold a key, I said, and the lock in my chest unclicked. Noah smiled without noise, and the night exhaled with us. I laid a boundary across the skyline and stepped back from the edge. When the first star showed, I chose to keep it and leave her in the dark. The quiet after storms felt strange, like air stripped of weight. I walked through the park where laughter once lived, and silence answered me now. The swings swayed in empty rhythm, metal squeaks echoing promises we carved into years. I loved her like family, I whispered, but the wind took it and did not return. The world around me was ordinary again, yet I carried scars invisible to strangers. Noah's words lingered, truth frees as much as it wounds. I believed him, even as memory pressed sharp edges against my ribs. I sat, letting the earth ground me, letting grief turn softer. At home, the mirror no longer frightened me. My reflection looked back steady, worn but whole. I touched the glass and said softly, "You survived." The words felt strange, like speaking to someone new who carried my face. Evan's absence lingered, but not as a wound, just a lesson carved deep. The messages were gone, deleted like ghosts, refusing to stay. The air smelled of tea leaves and rain, simple comforts I could trust. I will not lose myself again, I promised, and the vow rang true. The mirror fogged faintly with breath, but the image stayed unbroken. I returned to the cafe once more, the carved table scar still there. I ordered 1 cup, not 2, and sat with quiet dignity. This space is mine now, I thought, tracing wood worn by time. The hum of conversation surrounded me, but I no longer listened for her laugh. Memories rose, but they did not break me. They passed like old songs overheard. Noah texted, "You are stronger than her lies," and I smiled faintly, grateful. I sipped the coffee slowly, savoring warmth untainted by betrayal. The table no longer belonged to us, only to me and the strength I chose. The gallery stood quiet, stripped of its noise. I walked through white halls where her smirk once sharpened shadows. The canvases hung still, unmoved by human chaos. "Art endures," I murmured. "We don't." My footsteps echoed as I reached the far wall, letting silence fill every crack inside me. The fight was over, but echoes remained. I left the bouquet still wilting, its petals curling into brittle memories. It reminded me that beauty can rot if built on lies. With each step toward the exit, I felt lighter, carrying no one else's weight but my own. The final rooftop meeting was only with myself. The city pulsed below, neon veins alive in darkness. I whispered, "I lost a friend, but I kept my soul." The air tasted of closure, sharp but freeing. Stars emerge through gaps in clouds, steady witnesses to endings and beginnings. Her lies cut me open, I said, voice steady, but scars remind me I survive. I turned from the edge, refusing to linger where pain was born. My final thought lingered like thunder fading. She betrayed every version of us we could have been. The scar would stay, but it belonged to me now.